Hi, this is Ed. I'm in San Diego. Today is August 11, Monday. In a few minutes, we're going to have a very interesting program. It's featuring DianneDevitt. It's an old friend of mine, a business person for many years. In fact, 35 years teaching media at NYU in New York, and also 35 years in the meetings and events business. It's a huge business, multi-billion dollars, and it's worldwide. The cost to produce meetings and events has only gone up, and yet there's no real training for the people who are asked by usually the boss and president or C-suite level, ask the EA, the executive assistant. I'm not going to use the word secretary. The executive assistant has, in many cases, in most cases, no formal training whatsoever or experience in putting together a meeting. Well, you can call a hotel and make a reservation for lunch for 50 to 100 people or 500 people or whatever, and send over the menus, that kind of thing. And that is about starting an unfolding disaster if it's not done right. Think of the financial risk to the company, but even more so, the reputational risk to the company if the meeting doesn't start on time or the deal isn't financially secured properly. The risk management of uh, things going wrong or somebody getting hurt or, God forbid, other disasters impacts a corporate meeting. So DianneDevitt has put together a huge effort here of teaching, professionally teaching executive assistants. And now these are usually very large corporations. I'm going to read some stuff here. And when the show starts in a few minutes, we'll get into the great details. So let me tell you a little bit about DianneDevitt. Okay, she's a public speaker and a consultant in media. As I already mentioned, she's a professor, an adjunct professor at NYU in New York for 35 years. She's also an author and a trainer, so she's written two books. The first one is, What Color is Your Meeting? Well, you see behind me the world and blue water. Well, that has a certain connotation. Blue water means beauty and huge, dynamic, in fact. And it also means uh, freshness and perhaps safety, given the right parameters and training. Well, that's the kind of thing that DianneDevitt is talking about when she asks, what color is your meeting? Is it purple? Or is it red? Or is it green? Or is it blue? Or black and white? We're going to get into that with her. The other book that she's written is about success strategies for women in business. It's the name of it is Called to Lead: Success Strategies for Women. Uh, so you're going to want to check that out. Uh, so let's talk about the idea of a certificate training program for corporate executive assistants, EAs. Uh, so DianneDevitt notes, I'm going to read this, the importance of companies to seize their responsibility now to recognize the impact and importance of meetings to the company, to the organization. Meetings about product launch, or about branding, or about cultural shift, or about earnings reports. There's all kinds of reasons to have meetings. And the in-person meetings is what we're really talking about, although certainly there's the use of Zoom, digital technology, so people who cannot or will not travel, never mind to cut down on the expense, but the time involved, but they still wanted to participate. So the integration of video and using Zoom or whatever, um, it's here to stay. I use it in my business, as you'll see in just a few minutes. Okay, so Diane's research says that companies are leaving a lot of money on the table. Results are diminished, risk is increased, and the employee tasked with the responsibility, who's not professionally trained in all the different things there is to do or to manage them getting done by others. How do you communicate with professionals in food and entertainment, security, or production capability, seating, ticketing, PR? It's a tremendous amount of detail, a tremendous amount of work involved. So Diane's research shows that the EAs often burn out, and they don't want to do that anymore. And there's no incentive for them other than perhaps to satisfy the boss and to show that they can be trusted. But without formal training, the risk of losing money, leaving money on the table when it could be used, put together better, more efficiently, is a whole certificate training program that DianneDevitt has created. And we're going to be talking about the creation of that. And it's an ongoing thing. It's nothing is cast in stone. We have she has a format that has worked over the years. She's done many meetings, very large meetings, as well as smaller meetings. One of her insights is recognizing the various people that come together in an in-person setting, and they're basically strangers. There's some relationships, of course. It's the importance of CQ, the cultural quotient, it's called, understanding people and cultures from which they come, and they come to this place for a meeting. So by thinking about the different types of people and personalities, she says that's psychogeometric. Psychogeometric. In other words, there's a science to understand how to manage communications with such a wide variety of people coming together and expected to communicate, expected to learn something and take it away. So how do you make people feel more comfortable in that kind of a stressful situation? That's her specialty. We're going to learn more about that. So a lot of that has to do with, as I said, CQ, cultural quotient, and we have an expert in that. Philip Berry he's now retired from Colgate-Palmolive, where he was in charge of 60 country people operations and learning and development and branding for the company. And he calls it CQ, the cultural quotient. There's a measurement. He's going to have a brief slideshow, and the group coming together on this program today is going to discuss that. So a lot of CQ is understanding behavior. how people understand situations and words can be very, very different, whether one is from Southern Hemisphere countries, companies, as opposed to Northern American versus Japanese, or American versus German, or Germans versus people from India, or Africa. So how do all these different people, and this is a large meeting, very important that people come together and communicate and learn. So that is the scope of the hospitality meetings and events industry. We're going to learn details today. It affects company revenue, tourism in every destination city. There's a whole industry connected with the production of meetings and staging them properly. And that's what this global TV talk show is going to cover today. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back. Thank you very much. I'm going to pause this. Hello and welcome to Global TV Talk Show. This is Ed. I'm in San Diego, and we're joined by just a wonderful array of talent people here. It's just great. Here we have Jay Sternberg in Houston. First time on the program, although he and I have known each other from in-person meetings. It wasn't quite last century ago, but almost. And Paul Falcone. Paul, are you in Chicago or LA?
I am in Chicago right now, Ed.
Yeah, great. All right, Paul Falcone and I have known each other a number of years. He is currently on the board of directors of American Management Association, and he's also author of 16, 17 books.
Very good. 17. Lucky
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, well, that's great. And Dr. Ken Lloyd in LA, PhD. Ken, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself to Jay and the audience out there?
Hi, Jay, very nice to meet you. I'm Ken. Was in management consulting for many years, and then joined a client firm and spent 18 years with them as VP of Employee Planning and Development. Written a good number of business books along the way, most recently Performance Appraisals and Phrases for Dummies. And yeah, that was an update of what I did for the good folks at Wiley 15 years ago. So a lot has changed in the field, and so it was time for a new book on that. And continuing to do some executive coaching and other business writing as we move along. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Great.
you.
Jay, why don't you self-intro, please?
Yeah, very quickly, 35 years in consulting, major firms, been a partner in 2 of them, and just recently retired, and I'm working on my first book. So I'm going to take some cues from the folks that are out there.
Yes, and I sent a note to Stephen Howard introducing you, Jay, but Stephen's been on vacation. So here's Jay, and this is Stephen. So Stephen has written, I forget how many now, 26, or is it higher now?
No, still 26.
Okay, 26 books on leadership. And the recent book, just as 2 books have been winning these awards. What is the Firebird Award?
I don't know. It's one of the many book award contests around the world. I think it's run out of New Mexico. I'm not sure, but it's well respected in the industry for the awards that they give out. So yeah, so it's a nice pickup for both books. We got two book awards in the last month from them, so it was very nice.
Yeah, one was this book called Humany, and it's sequel to that, right? The Humany Mindset.
Humany Mindset won
Yeah.
the best book for social political change, and then the book I co-wrote with Ali Shami, partnering successfully with American firms, won for the best business general, not best nonfiction business general category, something like that. So yeah, so Ollie's now an award-winning author too. So we have to get him on
Yeah.
here.
So this book is called Partnering Successfully with American companies and business executives. Now, there couldn't be better timing for that book title.
Yeah, well, dealing with America is difficult right now if you're an overseas organization, international company, and it's not just it's not that Americans are difficult or American business is difficult. It's just the uncertainty going on. Everything. I mean, I even right now I just read before the show that Air India is canceling their direct flights from New Delhi to Washington, D.C. And they claim part of that is operational issues, but having lived in Asia for 21 years, I can almost guarantee you there's a bit of a political factor in that decision as well. The government carrier of India deciding not to have direct flights from Washington, D.C. Probably a little bit of a slight retaliation for the new tariff policy against India.
Also with us is Philip Berry, good friend, author of Being Better Than You Believe, and just a great speaker. And he's going to do a special presentation on CQ in just a few minutes. CQ is cultural quotient, and it's all about reading people, right? Understanding people from different backgrounds, different levels. Isn't that right, Philip?
Yeah, it's about competencies, global competency development.
Right. So Jay Sternberg just retired as a senior partner with Ernst & Young, People Advisory Services. So you know all about this, don't you? CQ.
I think that's a brilliant topic to go through. And I'll tell you, it seems to be a very hot topic right now. So absolutely, I would like to learn more though.
So star of the day here is with us, of course, DianneDevitt. 35 years experience in producing and managing meetings and events as giant size, not just a little thing like this right here. But 35 years as well teaching media related things at NYU, and that continues, right, Diane?
More or less.
Yeah, that's great. So I took the privilege of posting this certificate, which is the theme of today's show, on the screen. And, it's mirrored on my screen. So to me, it looks like it's backwards. But from your view, is it straight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Okay. I won't feel embarrassed then. Okay. So the certificate idea that you've come up with is as a result of EAs, in other words, executive assistants. Now, these are usually the boss's secretary, but we don't want to use that word anymore, right? So, yeah, so executive assistants are not trained in meetings other than calling the Hilton down the street and talking to the catering manager, and they send over a contract, and that's the end of the training, right?
Pretty much. So I was actually, first of all, good to see a lot of familiar faces, everyone. And thank you, Ed, as always, putting this together. I did not expect the backdrop. So anyway, but thank you for that. What compelled me to launch this certificate, what was just what you said. It was I've been in the business. I was one of the originals, and as the business grew and the professional planner grew with what the responsibilities were, it more and more became basically a strategic communication tool. And many of you have experienced well-planned meetings that have positive results versus those that don't. But since COVID, especially, about 65% of the original trained people in the hospitality, meetings and events industry left because it was the first industry to go and the last one to come back. So the industry itself is going through a renaissance, and training people who have the actual jobs in planning. Coupled with that, I've been observing over the years, because I've worked with many EAs that reported to CEOs, and they were my best partners in a sense because they were so willing to learn. And what I realized over these years, and what propelled me, like I said, to launch this, is that you don't know when you're delegating this, because you're thinking, not you specifically, but the manager or executive might be thinking, plan a meeting. But what's going through your mind is really basically just one little area of meetings and events, which would be the logistical planning. You don't have, and so the assistant then takes on this responsibility. You don't know, and this is a direct quote. I did a webinar for a group of EAs, about 100 of them, and I asked them, how many of you are afraid? How many of you feel fear when you're given that responsibility? The chat exploded with comments like, I'm a duck swimming underwater. My boss does not know. And that took me full circle to do some research into that. Like, okay, where does this come from? Well, the EA doesn't want to admit the fear because then the responsibility is taken away or there's doubt. So the vendors that the EA works with, i.e. the hotel, the caterer, the AV, whoever that is, they know that she's inexperienced. Therefore, you're going to be charged this level versus how to negotiate a better level. You're also going to be given, the vendor's going to be given direction and it'll be followed. And will the meeting be okay? The meeting will be okay. And it'll pass and the boss will say, great job, and so it goes. The problem is, with the, with what exists with a certificate like this or training like this or attention to this situation, is that the majority of corporations offer learning and development, but about 85 to 90% of them have nothing in meetings and events, number one. And number two is, if they did recognize this certificate, the biggest feedback I get from people taking this is the time to finish it. They want to finish it, but they don't have the time. I have one executive assistant who works for a major global brand right now, and she's so committed to finishing the certificate, but it's taken her over a year because she doesn't have the time. So this is really what has pushed me, and Ed has been such a supporter, and many of you have been a supporter, to take this to this level and say, how can this be addressed? Because the bottom line is, it's a risk for the manager to have an event produced by someone who's untrained. You're spending more money. You're using human capital that you don't have to, and you're not getting the results that should be attained to build your reputation and accomplish what you want to.
So the thing is that you've taught me, particularly in the last couple of weeks, Dianne, well, a couple of things. Number one, there's a boatload of issues of management, not just calling the caterer and getting the food done right and the seating chart and maybe the security briefing of, will there be police to prevent shooters coming in and things like that that we don't even want to think about. But all this adds to the stress of the EA, whoever the person is doing that. And so you also brought up the other day, as we leading up to Philip in just a couple of minutes now, I'm going to read this, psychogeometrics.
Right.
Stephen, have you heard of that before?
No, not at all.
I see you have your hand up.
I have a question for Dianne, but go ahead.
Well, psychogeometrics, I'm told, and I Googled this, which is the same as AI, isn't it? When you Google something, it's AI? Something
That's
like that.
another
Okay.
topic, Ed. Don't go
Yeah,
there.
no, okay.
No.
So the psychogeometrics, developed by Dr. Susan Dellinger, is a system I'm reading, is a system that uses 5 geometric shapes: square, circle, triangle, rectangle, and squiggle, to understand and categorize human behavior and communication styles of different people from different cultures actually being thrown together in a meeting. And how is that meeting going to be administered and run and communicated and broadcast and produced so that everybody learns something? That's the stress, and that's part of the certificate program. So
Yes, it is.
it's a method for analyzing personality traits and behaviors, interactions with others, aiming to improve communication and relationships across borders and cultures, across time and space, across generations, across industries. So I'm not going to read the whole thing here. Square.
Well,
I don't want to be a square. I want to be a
well,
triangle.
but you are. But anyway, sorry, not a square, but a bit of a box. Let's just say that. But Stephen, did you say you had a question before I answer this?
I do, and thanks, Dan, because I have to leave at the bottom of the hour. I have a client coaching call.
Sure.
Yeah, I ran meetings for like 12 years in Asia Pacific, and one of the things I noticed, and because of the time distances in Asia, a lot of the meetings were planned 6, 7 months in advance. But as you said, assigned to a secretary, a virtual assistant, a junior manager, sort of. But about 45 days before the event is to be held, suddenly the senior leader started getting involved in micromanaging. Is this typical here in the United States as well, or is it still prevalent to what the experience that I had?
Yes, is the short answer.
Okay.
Um, 2 factors. You planned meetings a while ago, pre-COVID.
Yes.
Add to all of the requirements of planning a meeting now, add the biggest factor, which is shorter planning times. So Jay will say, Diane, I got to have a meeting next month, 2 months from now. The planner, the requirements and what's required to do to produce that doesn't go away. But the window to plan is shorter and shorter. And so what again, so that leads me to, all right, I can do that for you. And the reason that I can do it for you is that I'm nearly 40 years in this business and I know who to call to get it done. But that's still going to be stressful for my team because the registration process. So this certificate has 19 modules in it. The first module, which I'm happy to send to all of you, is an introduction to the business of it. How vast this is a multi-billion-dollar business that affects revenue in every destination around the world, right? People meet, they have hotels, they spend money in restaurants. Tourism is impacted by this business.
So
So
here in San
Yeah.
Diego, I live here in the entertainment district, the tourist area, and the convention center is right across the street. And earlier, less than 30 days ago, the National Society of Human Resource Management put on its annual meeting there, and I was given a press pass to cover it and do some work for them. But they had 27,000 people there, and Comic-Con came in after that, and there were 120,000 people, and they dropped more than 100 million in San Diego. Okay, just to give you, that's big and full of risk. And but there's also little meetings going on. There's a finance company right across the street here in the Hyatt, rather than in the convention center. Okay, so, and there's like 100, but they're all millionaires coming together to plan what the tariffs impact is going to be.
So I wouldn't want to be that planner. So, and here's the other thing that I want to bring out to you, Ed, because you alluded to it before. You said, oh, Diane planned huge events. Yes, I have. But to me, and this is one of the things I've taught over the years, is the board of directors who's 12 to 15 people, a small meeting versus the 12,000 people that I can all feed chicken to and serve Chardonnay or Cabernet. 12 to 15 board of directors is 12 to 15 individual meetings at one time. Because each and every one of those CEOs that attend that board meeting needs individualized attention. So so when you say a little meeting or a big meeting, give me 12,000 people anytime. They're all going to eat chicken. And I'm going to have vegetarian on the side. It's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not, but you understand the concept.
Yeah.
So yes, so I just wanted to point that out to you. So there's a real parallel in this industry of the professional planner who understands the communication value and all the business benefits of this. And then there's the greater majority of untrained staff. And so the gerbil in the cage situation right now is the EA will be assigned a task, not really know who to call or what to do. And remember, the vendors on the other side know that the red company expends X amount of dollars on volume in their hotel. So the hotels actually have what they call a RevPAR ratio. They have a revenue manager who assesses the value of every meeting that comes in. So when the red company is going to do a meeting and they know that their $20 million client, they assess it. So here's the EA given the responsibility. Well, what does she or he do? Go back to the meetings department for guidance. The meetings department, in the meanwhile, is stretched to the limit over their head, taking care of those 12 to 15 board members or senior management meetings. They're trying to help, and then the loop goes around. And so it's this is what's happening. In my research, I've spoken to about 8 to 10 major global companies, the people that I know there, and they're like, Diane, this is just what the situation is, and we can't handle, we meaning the meetings and events department, can't handle anymore. But we don't have the trained people to bring in or the budgets to hire consultants to come in, experienced planners to come in and help. So is it a misunderstood business? Yes, it is. At this stage in my life, I thought, I've been involved. I've been on boards. I've been involved with associations like Meeting Professionals International. There's many of them. But it's interesting, and I can go back years writing a cover article on why isn't it a requirement for every business school to teach people a meetings and events course?
Right.
So that's kind of, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So Diane has written 2 books. One of them is called "What Color Is Your Meet?"
What color is your event? Yeah.
Yeah. So what color is this? I'm wearing a lavender shirt, and Stephen's wearing a blue shirt.
Basically an analogy. So
Yeah,
the whole thing is an analogy on the personality, because no two are alike. And Ed alluded to the psychogeometrics that I taught in my class, because again, the planner and educating the world on this right now is the professional planner is not just and I say just, the role of the engineer or the the operational person is one thing. That's executing the meeting. But the event strategist or the meeting strategist has to get into why and how and all the reasons that this is happening, especially understanding the people. And Philip, I love I love the CQ and looking into it, because it's exactly what I teach the students. If you're going to teach people that are triangles, they're like the devil is, the devil wears Prada, the boss, how they, boom, dump the coat on the desk, get me a medium rare steak, versus the circle, who is, what can I do for you? I'll work till midnight. I'll do anything for you. The box is an analyst. The box is the one, if you give 10 things to do, they will do them 1 to 10, but the squiggle, the creative person, they'll start 1 to 10 with 14. Show up to an 8 o'clock meeting at 8:30 and say, I'm still on time. So you have to understand people and protocol, and it's critical to plan. And that's another thing so anyway, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Philip. Philip Berry, retired now for several years from a global role at the C-suite of Colgate-Palmolive. Welcome again, my friend.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So, maybe what I'll do, I wanted to put together some thoughts and see if I can share the,
Yeah, my screen share should be working. Yep, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, so when I think about why are we here, I believe that the real issue has to do with how we identify what makes us unique and distinctive. And in fact, Diane, when I think about your presentation, and when I think about what you were talking about in terms of individuals and organizations and what they need to do differently, we really need to be able to identify what makes individuals distinctive from the standpoint of how they present learning. Because learning, that's what we're really talking about. Matter of fact, what you're talking about really is how you can get individuals organized and give them this certification so that way they can expand their learning possibilities throughout the organization. You're not talking about just giving a certificate. And I think that if you would move to a higher level from a strategic standpoint with individuals that you talk to, with that as a proposition of going in, I think it's going to make your selling point even stronger. And you have some great information.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I read through all of it. I read it in detail, and so I just wanted to comment on that with the group before I moved on. So when I think about branding, um, everybody has a brand, but what I want to do is to talk about what the opportunity is on a global level. There's a tremendous opportunity that individuals have to highlight the new you, who you are. And that's where cultural intelligence comes in. That there's a lot of focus that is put on, well, how smart are you? What's your IQ? Matter of fact, too much information is put on that, too much emphasis. Uh, but IQ and then also the EQ is not enough. The differentiator really has to do with being able to develop your CQ, and that's what really separates international leaders from the rest. And I just want to give some thoughts on that from the standpoint of a few different dimensions. So, for example, some people think, matter of fact, I have 4 points up here. There's an inordinate amount of information or time that is spent on point number 2, which is developing your CQ knowledge. People feel, well, if I've been to a certain country, eat certain food, had vacations in certain places, and therefore I have enough CQ. But what they're really talking about is just the 1 point, which is the knowledge. But there's the other pieces, which has to do with drive and motivation. So that way individuals are really able to adapt cross-culturally, and it has to do with understanding the intrinsic motivation of different cultures and building confidence and working cross-culturally, and also resilience that comes when you're faced with opportunities. Um, one of the things that's so disturbing is I'm looking at the global arena right now, is that we don't have enough people who really want to understand how they can adapt they just want to go in and put maybe the American brand on something, and then they feel that that's it. Well, that's not it. What needs to also happen is that you need to have a CQ strategy, which is being able to plan and work across all of the different nationalities and multicultural interactions that you have, and not taking assumptions for granted in terms of how you're approaching things, and really adjusting the strategies that you have based on the cultural context. Since I've worked in over 60 countries and been over HR and organizations and moved people throughout all of these countries, I've seen that there's a real need to be able to develop the strategy, a strategic view in terms of how you approach that. And that's where business success comes in. And also being able to move that further into adapting the type, what I call the CQ action, and which is how am I adapting behaviors, and how am I modifying styles that might exist. If I find that a person is very strong, maybe in one country, say, pick any country, Germany. Well, where else can I use? You might be successful in that place, or you might be successful in Thailand, or you might be successful in Mexico. But are you able to develop the type of behaviors and values that make you more effective as you're moving around the world? So that's why I look at the whole issue of what I call global citizenship and approaching leadership from a whole different level. And when we talk about the traits of leaders that we need to have in place, the traits of high CQ leaders has to do with embracing the complexity and ambiguity, building your trust, because trust is really a factor here. In fact, if we could look at the international, it's really interesting looking at the international arena. And the big issue that we have is that individuals who are calling themselves leaders haven't done what is necessary to build trust across all of the different diverse stakeholder groups. That's a key characteristic. It's a sine qua non for success as a leader. And so we need to be able to have individuals who are able to do that and who can adapt their communication styles accordingly, not using just styles or examples from one country and then imposing that on individuals in other places and feeling that that's what they need to have. And also it has to do with curiosity that one would have when you are, one of the things that I have found is that what has made me a successful global leader is being curious about other type of cultures and coming in with that, not from the standpoint of I know it all, but I like to learn it all. It's a whole different way of approaching life and a whole different way of exhibiting leadership, and then balancing when you're looking at policies that you want to put in place. How can I balance those standards that I might want to have on a global basis with the local sensitivities, with local understanding? And that has to do with the enhancement of products and services that I deliver across the board. And if we could do this, then we're going to have high performance. We're going to be able to boost retention, and also we're going to be able to provide for profitable growth. There are a few countries, a few companies, I think, that do this pretty well. And I've worked in two of them at high levels with Procter and also with Colgate-Palmolive. And Tata is another company and there are a few other ones that we could put Unilever on there, a few other companies we could throw on there. But when I talk about organizations that have high CQ impact, it's because those companies aren't just producing products that are in different countries, but also that they're producing a management and leadership cadre that is able to bring that expertise across areas around the world, and they can begin to adapt the way they are approaching the introduction and enhancement of their products, in areas across the world. That's what Tata also is doing a very good job of doing that. And there are probably others that we could talk about, and we'd be interested to talk about that. But we need to understand, well, what is it that these companies do in order to get at the point where they can have high CQ leaders? So, a few things that they do. One is that they have leadership immersion, and that immersion has to do with not just moving a person to one country and then moving them back, but rotating people through structured type of assignments where there's mentoring across the world. In fact, I would say that if you are able to do that, then you can enhance the type of CQ action and also strategic effectiveness that you bring about. The other thing is that those companies are able to provide for inclusive talent development. They are able to integrate the CQ assessment with, like, matter of fact, Dianne talks about different training programs. Well, that's not just a separate program. CQ assessment needs to be built in and integrated in all type of training that you have from a leadership perspective. So that way you're approaching learning from that standpoint, as opposed to just a separate course. Some people just feel, well, let me just take another course and now I've built up my CQ intelligence. Well, you haven't done it unless you are able to enhance what you're doing along the lines, the 4 different elements that I talked about. And then being able to have localized decision making, where, for example, you put together regional task force that are strongly aligned, and also build in a cultural framework of approaching things. I remember it when I was living in Europe, and we decided, well, Italy is a nice place to learn from a marketing standpoint, and so is maybe France. But then from the standpoint of integration and product development, well, maybe that would be England, and maybe that might be Germany. Well, instead of launching your product where you will develop that across the board on a linear basis, have regional teams that have built in those competencies and capabilities, understanding what needs to happen across the board, so that way I can reduce cycle time in terms of introducing a product in anywhere that I'm going to go. And I've seen this happen, by virtue of how we have that decision making baked in, and the training and the understanding is baked into an assignment, baked into a process right up front. And then the last piece that I would say on this is that understanding and having cross-cultural collaboration and standardizing global teamwork, as a real value across the board, where you talk about having inclusive behaviors and rewarding those type of behaviors because they help you to win in the marketplace. It all has to do, we're not just doing these just because it's a nice thing to do. The companies that are focusing on this find that it's important because that's the type of mentality that they want to have and the type of personality that they want to have working with the organizations. And you can see it measurably giving results from a standpoint of innovation, from talent retention, and also performance, financial performance. So these are just a few things that I wanted to present on this topic. And when it comes down to branding more, certainly I really like to focus on the rebranding piece, because everybody has a brand already. It's not that people don't have a brand. They don't understand their brand. And what they don't do is enough to enhance what their brand is. And so that's where all of this comes in. So that's what I wanted to do in terms of just presenting some of this up front, and doing it in a way that would help us to broaden our understanding across the board. So maybe we can have some discussion on this based on this, and I can stop sharing and we could open up the rest of the time for some really good discussion on this. Ed, I'll leave it up to you to
Thank you,
handle.
Philip. That's just brilliant, and it really applies to the understanding of a large meeting. Diane is bringing together senior people to talk with Philip and that topic at that level, senior level, and the meeting planner is just lost. That doesn't know what to do or how to do it. Jay Sternberg, you have vast experience, I imagine, with EY and putting on meetings, and so does the idea of the certificate make sense, and the strategic thing that Philip has identified?
I'll answer your question directly, and then Philip, I just have a comment for you that I think could be helpful. The answer is one. I was responsible for our global HR conference for a couple of years, so I'm aware of when we have large meetings, and not large like you were talking about. It. We're talking about like 2,000 people, and I put in the comment section, Diana. I don't think that that's relevant necessarily because those individuals are responsible for those meetings year round. It is a consistent view. When you talk about meetings with your board members, you're talking about meetings with leadership teams that do a regional perspective. It's generally individuals who don't do this for a living. That's where I think the certification is even more important. And I do think it adds a complication, specifically around COVID, when you have a physical presence and an online presence. It adds a complication and adds something more to the window. Going directly to Philip, I led a global technology team for the last couple of years, and where I was commenting on is you mentioned product-oriented organizations, and I think that's really smart. I also know that the Big Four and consulting organizations specifically do this for a living, but even if they do it well, they're focused in that area. In other words, when I ran a global team, and you mentioned specifically Germany, and I think you mentioned Singapore, but it was somewhere in Asia, you couldn't have two more diverse cultures. And I was living in India, and then I was living in Germany, and it's a crazy environment when you have to reshape your leadership style to match the organization that you're in at that moment. I think, to my point, that because these organizations focus on it, they want to learn more about it. I think what you just presented would be critical to any part of the Big Four, specifically those organizations that are focused in that global area.
Paul
No,
Falcone. Yeah. Yes, Philip.
No, and I think Jay, you make a really great point, and in fact, the being able to style flex when you're moving from one country to another. I mean, I always say that the type of competencies that made you a leader in one country won't necessarily make you a leader in another country unless you flex your style in order to adapt, and unless you go in with the learning posture where and curiosity. I mean, matter of fact, those are the values that one needs to have. It's almost not one person going and saying, well, let me just show you how it's done because this is how I did it here. Let me show you how you can do it based on these things. It's a whole different posture in terms of how you approach the work.
Even worse, it can be contradictory. What
is that
successful in Germany could be a failure in Beijing.
Very true. Very, very, very true.
Yeah, Paul?
Well, it's funny. I was going to say two things. First of all, Diane, what's interesting to me is when I was head of HR for Nickelodeon Animation, we had a vice president of event planning. Now we had Kids' Choice Awards and these other things. But the person Laura was wonderful, who was in that role, but she promoted up from assistant, then they made her manager, then they made her a director. Then it got so big, they made her a VP. But all of it was stuff that she had to design on her own and figure out on her own. And a lot of it was her personality and her natural ability to communicate. Your certificate program would make so much sense for people in larger companies to put some real meat on the bones and understand the broader structure of how to do this, especially if the organization is big enough to have a VP in the event planning space. I almost see it as like mandatory. Like you can't get past a certain level unless you're certified in this. And that's why I think it's so brilliant what you're doing. No, my pleasure, of course. Philip, this idea of CQ, I love it. I mean, I've been writing a lot about team emotional intelligence because when the book came out, Golan's book came out in 1995, it was all about individual for the most part. but there's a team complement to that. It's like, how do you get your team to be more emotionally intelligent? How do you talk to them about having a stronger EQ? But the cultural quotient, I think, is brilliant. I never thought about that. And especially, you're right, I was head of HR for head of international HR for Paramount Pictures. This idea of in a global workforce and global leadership, how do you adapt in different countries? It's opening my eyes, and I'm like, it shouldn't be. I should have thought of this already. But I love the way you've interpreted it, and congratulations on your book. I think it's fabulous.
Thank
Let's
you.
go to Ken Lloyd.
Yeah, actually, I previously learned about cultural intelligence from Philip in one of his earlier broadcasts, and I had the same reaction as Paul. It's absolutely brilliant, and it is certainly critical for effectiveness in today's world of work. I also like Philip's point on, if you will, knowledge, where some people approach new projects, new ventures, new locales. I've got the knowledge, I have all this data, I know all about it. And that is simply not enough. And Phil also mentioned the importance of motivation and drive and focus and strategic planning and ultimately taking us to action. So we're not just sitting there with all that knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge sitting out there in Google. But in terms of bringing it to success in the workplace, we try to do exactly what Philip is talking about. And that means for each of us individually, look at our motivation, look at our drive, and the strategic planning in which we're engaging, and the actions that we plan to take and do take, and then being honestly and frankly critical of the steps we've taken. How have we done? And to be willing to take feedback from others on those actions as well. So Philip truly sets a much stronger foundation and stage for success in these arenas. And certainly it ties into what Diane is saying. If we're going to be engaging in planning for meetings, all of those functions, I could know all about meeting plannings, but if I don't have the other factors that Philip has mentioned, I'm going to fail. It's just simply not enough. And maybe that's the title. Knowledge is not enough. It's not.
Yeah, it's true.
Can I just jump in here a second?
Okay.
I'm sorry, but no, because two things come up because of course I love everything that Philip was presenting and its critical need. But I'm going to speak from the planner perspective now. We're going to have that meeting in India, and the planning team is based in New York. So the way that I train staff on this is through the years, there were two wonderful books that were written by a man named Roger Axtell called Do's and Taboos Around the World. And then it grew to be Gestures, something about gestures, the do's and taboos of body language. That's one way to teach. But the second thing that I'm bringing up here is, again, this is through no fault of management, except that they just didn't know, is that the reason that the planner wants to join an association like Meeting Professionals International or Professional Conference Management or pick an industry incentive is because of the global alliances. Now, to this day, I attend a meeting in Vegas every fall called IMEX. It's International Meeting Exchange. Every country in the world is represented. Major city destinations, all the hotel brands, the airlines, anyone that is critical in the process of planning a meeting. And planners are sometimes not permitted to go because it looks like too much fun. What looks like fun is not fun. This is a relationship business, bar none. And so again, when Jay comes to me and wants to plan that meeting in India, I can do that now, Jay, because I know who to call and I have the resources to help you. So there's that factor. The second factor is that when the planner goes back and says to management, yes, I can do that. I can plan that event in India. We'll hire a team in India. It's not going to cost you more money. It's actually going to be very cost effective to use destination experts rather than bring in your own team. Oh, we're going to save money. We'll bring the EAs or whoever, the marketing people or admin or whoever's involved in the meeting. We'll save money. We'll use our own staff. I hate that. That's more work for mom. Yeah,
I have
Phil.
I have a question for Diane. And one of the things, and Ed, it's directly related to the fact that, I mean, you and I met, gosh, 30 years ago, I think, when you were doing wonderful conferences, and now we're having meetings online. And so what I'm wondering is, since COVID, it seems that a lot of stuff has changed in terms of how people get together and all. And Diane, are you seeing that also in your business, that when you're talking about bringing people together, it's not always in person because of that? I mean, what has changed? What do you see changing? How
Well,
are you
I'll
adapting
tell you
to
what
it?
changed. The industry evolved to meet the demand, to meet the new way of meeting. So a couple of things have happened. Number one, from a planning perspective, if I were managing a department, global department, I would then have to bring on a new, by the way, a new position, a broadcast planner, a planner who understands streaming and Zoom calls and how to do all of the behind the scenes. And so then what has evolved is studios where if senior management is producing a town hall, they would go in and produce the meeting live so that it could be recorded and go out to the world. So a new position evolved called broadcast planner versus the on-site live in-person planner. All right, that's number one from an how-to point of view, execution. The second thing is that virtual meetings have taken on, as you all know, many different forms. And so that just became another choice for the professional planner to go to senior management when they say plan a meeting, and in the justification of it and the qualification of it saying, would this be more effective to be online? Do we need to do a hybrid, meaning in person and online? Or do we strictly do this in person, which is actually elevated the meaning of going to something in person because of the investment that's made? And so the actual live meeting has become more meaningful to say that we're investing in you. We've paid for you to come here. We would like you in person. And that's what has evolved since COVID. Yeah.
I want to jump in as we're running close to the end of time here. We can go longer if you want, but just let me know. But Paul, you're in Chicago, and so is Diane, and maybe you can get together sometime. Diane, are you in Naperville?
No, I'm in the Elk Grove, Schaumburg area, but Paul and I will meet. It's on my calendar.
I didn't know you were here right now. So okay, good. Let's reach out. That'd be perfect. Thanks, Ed. Good catch. And Diane, I look forward to
I
it.
know, yeah, it's great. So Ken, this is dynamite stuff. Great TV. And so the talks that you and I have had the past couple of weeks, the past month, Diane, about this, in particular in the last week, where the structure has come together for the first. Why don't you take us through what this first next edition will be?
Well, yeah. So what Ed and I are planning is that we'll have a show twice a month, and what I've done is I've outlined topics through 6 months of different categories, everything from the very beginning. How do we justify this? How do we qualify this from a business point of view? All of the strategy that goes into it, all of the understanding from the people to what I call a trigger word, which means that if Ken is hosting the meeting, I'm going to have what I called my closed door, you can't escape meeting with you. Because behind every objective to a meeting is the real reason that you want the meeting. or some inner goals or objectives. Jay's nodding his head because he knows what I mean. Could be an anniversary that you're celebrating, and you could have goals that you want to attain, but there's always a hidden reason that you know, which you should, why you're going to make that investment. So basically each of these bi-monthly shows will focus on different topics. However, and from a high level, you know, whether it's transportation or it's event decor, which is actually now branding. So each of these topics we'll discuss, and I will give examples to you and to the audience of experiences that I've had that I feel that can benefit for all the right reasons. And, you know, one of the things that too, that, you know, what Philip was bringing up about planning globally, I'll share just this one short story with you. It's basically where I met my husband now, so I have to share it with you. But I was planning a meeting for a CEO friend in 2016. There were over 10 countries involved, a week-long conference. And it was one of the most challenging meetings of my entire 35 to 40 years. Why? Because Korea attended, India attended, Saudi attended. This was not, oh, let's get Italy, you know, Spain and France together. These were major companies involved in the engineering industry. And the biggest challenge that I faced was catering and food. I could not have the smell of bacon in the hotel. That was dictated to me. So I had to say to the Hyatt, figure it out. But if anyone wants breakfast in your restaurant, we can't have the smell of bacon. Or we can't serve beef because of this, and we can't serve pork. So all of those nuances was a little challenge to me. Yeah, we did it. Of course we did it. But I just wanted to point out to you that things that you may not even think about in the cultural sphere affect the planning process.
It
So
is really
that's what we'll
complex.
talk about.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
and everything else. Jay, thank you for your time here. And in today's news, I noticed that EY, or maybe it was yesterday, but I read it today, about EY has got 400,000 employees to learn AI without any threats or dangerous situation. It was in the headlines that how did they change their system so that they didn't have to force employees to want to learn AI?
There's as we get more and more familiar, you'll notice I break things out into three specific groups, and I'll tell you how EY did it in this case. One is they formed alliances early on. Microsoft is a key alliance from a co-pilot perspective. I have a personal opinion that if you treat AI like a co-pilot, as opposed to dictating what it will do or expecting more than you should, you will fail. But if you treat it like a co-pilot, you'll succeed. So one, they formed alliances early. The second is they built their own personal cloud around AI. So nobody from EY and those 400,000 individuals can go out to ChatGPT, can go out to Gronk from an XAI perspective. It has to be within the firewall behind EY. And they built up from the original environment and they added elements to it. You can imagine why that's important. The third, and this is the most relevant from an EY perspective, is we have to make sure that it's giving appropriate answers at the appropriate time for the appropriate reasons. And we're teaching people about prompts. So one of my goals in the last couple of weeks, I did a lot of lectures around AI, was understanding what AI can do. Dianne, from an EA perspective, they should be better than everybody in the organization at AI. Period. End of sentence. That includes the CEO. And why? Because their jobs from a co-pilot perspective can be enhanced in that environment. Mm-hmm. The second, and it is interesting, and I'll just relate it to what we've talked about today. From an AI perspective, cultural enhancement is critical from this environment. What works in India does not work in New York, period. Mm-hmm. And then finally, why EY has been so successful is they're continuing to iterate around the environment of what it should and can do from a tax and audit perspective. I think it's huge in the headlines. Having a 400,000 person organization that has its complications, AI is going to be critical in the whole environment.
Thank you so much, everybody, for doing this. As we end this thing, Diane, let's go to you and the 5 whys, right? That's one of your categories that we're going to talk about, the 5 whys.
Right.
Yes, Philip.
Before that, I'm sorry, I have a medical thing I have to go to. So
Yeah,
Diane,
thank you very much.
thanks again for your presentation, and also Jay, Paul, and Ken. Always good interfacing with you, and looking forward to our next opportunity. So thanks
And
again.
I'd be glad to share contact details with everybody, and we'll get the show out by the end of the day today.
Sounds good.
So the
Take
5
care.
whys, Diane, why do this? Why this? Why that?
Well,
In order to get to the problem.
well, you're close, but the first show will focus on what I call the 5 W's, you know,
Oh,
close enough.
okay.
Starts with a Y. Ed missed that class, the alphabet class. So, you know, it's just about really defining objectives and being very clear with goals and what would like to be accomplished. And as we were discussing, I said to him, you know, again, this is the first part of the process of going in from a strategic point of view of, you know, why is this event being held? Why is this gathering being held? And what would we like to accomplish and what needs to be accomplished, right? The logistics of it, the who's coming, where it is, and when it is what we'll delve into, I think, in the first show. But I also wanted to wrap up with this certificate is comprehensive in terms of starting out with defining business objectives, going through the logistical requirements of everything from the business point of view, and then also ending with things like legal, insurance, risk management is huge, technology is huge, and then understanding return on investment and return on event, which again, to a professional planner now, the platforms that are available in the industry, no registration process begins without clarifying what we just outlined with the W's, because planners have to justify the spend with measuring the return on investment. And so the data and the analytics, the meetings industry became the biggest opportunity for marketers because of the data and analytics, which then leads to the privacy and the risk that's involved. So there's a lot that we'll be discussing, and I'm looking forward to it.
Ken?
Just thank you for the information today. Look forward to the deep dive into the various areas, and it just sounds excellent in a field that is so filled with complexities and things that can go wrong. I just can't imagine the range of details that you have to cover in doing this well. So look forward to hearing what you have to say and the research you've done.
Paul, thank you so much for showing up.
Always my pleasure. I heard Diane was doing the presentation, and then Philip, I said, I can't miss this one. I gotta be on.
Yeah, right. And Jay, I'm just so fortunate. He and the Dallas-based EY People Advisory Service partner, Patrick Landers, has been on our program before, especially the one that focused on repatriation issues. Patrick was based in India with his wife and 2 kids for a number of years, and then came back and had all kinds of issues, even though EY was really generous with everything. It was the emotional baggage, the emotional problems, which were serious and solved. But so now Patrick has shifted. Well, he had to retire because he reached the mandatory EY retirement age of 60. And so he's now moved over to this other accounting firm called RSM, and he's contacted me just the past day or two, last week, and says we're going to do things together. Stay tuned. That's a whole other group now. So
Well,
things are good.
well, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
And
This
thank you, Ken and Paul. Good to
Right
see
back
both.
to you. Thanks,
Yes.
Diane.
So excited about
Ed?
the new program you've got coming forward. That's great.
Well, you're hired, Paul. You're
There you
hired.
go. Count me in.
You and Ken are hired. You're in my official board of directors.
There you go. There you go. That's
So-
I
wonderful.
appreciate it.
so do you think 2 a month is too slow? Do you think we ought to speed it up? I mean, let's start it and see how it goes, of course, but yeah. I mean, it just could be a mushrooming audience with so many corporate minds interested, as you could see right away.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be discussed.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
back to you.
Pleasure.
Be well, all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See y'all
Bye.
soon.
Ciao.
Paul, I'll call you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, all.